You've already been welcomed to the Wilson Center. Those of you who were with us for part one, for those of you joining us for part two, welcome to the Woodrow Wilson Center. The quick version of what we are, who we are, is we are the nation's living memorial to its 28th president, Woodrow Wilson. We're a public-private partnership in that about a third of our funding comes from the federal government as part of the presidential memorial. The other portion is private trust. And what we attempt to be is a place where, in a town filled with partisan arguments, we're a place for a safe haven for discussions that are decidedly of a nonpartisan content and focus. And we provide deep research. Unlike our cousins in the think tank industry, we don't think of ourselves as a think tank in that we don't advocate for specific legislative outcomes or specific pieces of legislation. We try to inform the process with the hope that what we provide creates a better sausage, and what goes in comes out. So my name is John Molesky. My role here is I'm the producer and host of our weekly TV radio program, Dialogue at the Wilson Center, seen every Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. across the country on MHZ Worldview, locally on MHZ1. So I excuse the plug, but every opportunity, why not? To those of you joining us via the World Wide Web, welcome to the webcast. Welcome back to part two of our webcast. Thanks for staying with us. Wherever you may be, we're happy to have you with us. This is sort of part two of growing up Muslim in America. And in this case, it's and looking for votes, being elected. The judges had different experiences when it came to elections, but all of the panelists that you're going to meet now have run for office and were successful, and that's one of the reasons that they're with us today. I'm going to introduce them just with the highlight of their bio, because you have the expanded versions in front of you from your left to right. So on your far left is Robert Jackson, a city council member from the city so big they had to name it twice, New York, New York. Welcome, Mr. Jackson. And I'll say up front right now, he's got to catch a train back to the Big Apple at about 5 o'clock at Union Station, so he'll be leaving us a little early today. Also with us, Mohammed Hamiduddin. And it was, and we were talking about names, and we'll get into that, what's in a name. And I know some people say Hamiduddin or things like that. And what Mayor Hamiduddin told me is that he let people call him whatever they wanted to until he got married. And his wife insisted that we get the name right. And he is the mayor of Teaneck, New Jersey, so we welcome him as well. Next up is Abdul Hadis, the mayor of Wayne, Michigan. And again, we'll have some interesting things to find out about how what name you listed on the ballot when you ran initially. And then finally, another exotic name, Wayne Smith. I should say that, Abdul, I did say you're the mayor of Wayne, Michigan, and Wayne Smith is the mayor of Irvington, New Jersey. So please help me in welcoming our second panel for part two of this discussion. First thing, Flip started off with a question that I think was very useful the first time around, is that we find out about your entry into public life. If you take us back to, when you were a little boy in Little Rock, Arkansas, and wanting to be president of the United States, or whatever your particular story might be. And let's do it in the order of introduction. Councilman Jackson, if you could start off.
Sure. First, let me thank you for inviting me down here in Washington, D.C. to be a part of this American Muslim local officials, the challenges and opportunities. And in fact, the City Council of New York, we have our stated meeting, which is the full City Council, and I elected to come here instead of being up there voting, so I'm marked absence for a full body. But let me just say that I was born and raised in Harlem, New York. My parents, my mom was a Baptist, and I took my Shahada in 1975. I met my beautiful wife in college, who was born and raised as a Muslim in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. And from that point forward, we raised three beautiful girls, Sadia, Asmahan, and Sumaya, in New York City. But I became involved in the electoral process by getting involved in education, in the Parents Association, in the Democratic Club. And so my involvement in the Parents Association for 20 years and the Democratic Club, and I worked 22 years for a labor union. We have term limits in New York City, and when my predecessor, Stanley Michaels, who served 24 years in the City Council, could not run again, everyone encouraged me to run for the City Council of New York. And when I ran in 2001, no one asked me what my religion was. My religion was never an issue in my electoral process. But I don't make any assumptions whatsoever, because I never hid my religion whatsoever from anyone. And in fact, if you go to my Facebook page, it says, religion, I'm a Muslim. But some people have said to me that you don't have a Muslim name. And I said, what is a Muslim name? You don't look like a Muslim. What does a Muslim look like? Muslim look like everyone on this planet. So, you know, that's how I got involved. And I was elected to the city council. I elected 4 terms, and now I'm running for the president of the borough of Manhattan, 1.8 million people. I represent now about 165,000 people in my district in northern Manhattan.
So your term limit is up this year?
I'm term limited out, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Mayor Hamidine?
Again, I'd like to also thank the Wilson Center for putting on this program. How did I become involved in public service was just a really big accident. What ended up happening was in 2006, my childhood friend was running for city council, and there were 2 other Muslims running at that time. And he came up to me and he asked me, we've known each other since we were 12 years old. He asked me, what are the issues you know, in your community? And I said, look, taxes, education, all of these things, they're really not the big issue in our town, in our masjid, in our community. The big issue is expansion of our local mosque. And it seems like whenever we go before the planning board and the zoning board, you know, things just don't work out for some reason. And then he said to me, he said, okay, you know, help me get elected and we'll do something about that. And at that moment, he got elected, and then he came back and he gave me an application for the planning board. And I said to him, just like any other American would say, what is this? And he said, this is an application for the planning board. And I said, well, I don't want to do something about this. I want you to do something about this. And he looked at me and he said, something that I always carry with me for the last 5.5 years, 6 years since I've been in public office was, Mohammed, this is your opportunity to come back and educate your community. If you don't take this opportunity, it is not your community's failure, it is your failure. So I ended up applying, interviewing, and getting on the planning board. I was the 2nd alternate on the planning board. So I just want you to understand what a low position that is. That means 2 other people don't have to show up before you get the right to vote. So that's where I started off, and I caught the attention of the mayor at that time, Ellie Katz, because I would come to the meetings, I would come prepared, and I had the reputation of moving things along, you know, without having, you know, what's he going to do? What's he going to do? Well, it doesn't matter what that's going to do. There's a guy who wants to put a business up. What are you going to do? And I had the reputation for cleaning up the backlog on our planning board. And then in 2008, I ran for council. I won by 38 votes. So every vote does count. And then in 2010, the council elected me mayor. And then 2012, when I ran for re-election, I was overwhelmingly re-elected as the highest vote getter, and I beat my opponent by double digits. So I doubled her vote count. So, and my name was Mohammed the whole time. So, it's been an interesting journey since 2010, since I became mayor. From Jeddah, Saudi Arabia to Hyderabad, India, it was a story of a Muslim being a mayor of a predominantly Jewish town. And I've had to carry and be an ambassador for Islam ever since.
Imagine what the vote count could have been if your name were Fred or something.
I think it would be less because, you know, it was like, I'm voting for the guy with the long last name.
You get more for your money, more letters. Mayor Haydes, I love the fact that you go by Mayor Al. I'm a New York City native, born in the Bronx, but I then moved to a small town where mayors were known by their first names. The formative mayor for me was Mayor Ed. So Mayor Al, tell us about your path to public service.
You know, as everybody heard before, it takes a city to raise a child. In my case, it took a city to raise a mayor. I moved into the city of Wayne in 1974, and Thursday in September, I bought a small convenience store in the middle of the community, and then 6 months later, I like the community, I like the family-friendly climate in the city, in the school, so I decided to move my family. I was living like 15 miles away from that community, so I bought a house and moved my house to the city of Wayne. I moved on Thursday morning. On Sunday morning, one of the school assistant principal, his name Roy Clay, stopped at my place of business, and he said, on Sunday, we'd like to have you and your wife to meet the neighbors. They have an open house for me. So I felt, as I told my wife when we decided to buy a house, it's a great community, and that it's, so on Sunday, probably 2-3 streets from that neighborhood, every one of them show with something, cookie, and at that time, you know, I never worry about my weight. I taste every plate came in. So, but it gave me a sense of feel I'm home, because you know, my history is I left Lebanon in 1950. I left, in fact, my home at age of 10 to the school, probably 100 kilometers from the south in Lebanon. And then later on in 1959, I went to West Africa and stayed there for 10 years, almost 11 years. And then I emigrated to the United States, so I don't know where home. So I felt I'm home in Wayne. So I started get involved. You know, people come to the store, talk about their problem, the city's problem, and I get engaged and listening and express my opinion, whatever right or wrong. And the mayor stopped at the store after a couple incidents happened in the neighborhood, and I got a little bit involved. He stopped and he asked me to serve on the Zoning Board of Appeal. So I didn't know what's Zoning Board of Appeal. I said, Mayor, I don't know what you're getting me into. He said, that's why I want you. I got a little bit offended. I thought he want rubber stamp. I said, pardon me? He said, no, 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 you didn't understand me. I want you because you're honest. You're not afraid to tell me you don't know. So I felt a little better. I served on that, and after a while, he asked me to serve on the Charter Review Committee. Our charter is very old and still address everything, policemen and no police person, you know, and language and some ordinance. It's not worth the paper written on it because it conflicts with the state, and the state oversees the city charter. So I served with him with 2-3 attorneys. I didn't know. I was jumping in the swimming pool where I don't know how to swim. You know, you sit with 3 lawyers and you don't know where they're going to take you for. And we start the argument and the fight. I believe in the, it's one thing I learned early. It's the Constitution of the United States. It's the best piece of paper written on earth. And I believe in it, and I was sitting with him fighting from that issue. And with my love to this Constitution, I always carry a copy in my pocket. So I put it on the table when the argument.
I can confirm it's there, I think.
Yeah, well, it's right here. You know.
We always check on political claims.
So I served on many board and commission, and then the mayor got old, and he found out he have a Parkinson disease. He stopped and he asked me to consider poll petition to run. I told him, I can't run. You up for election this year. He wouldn't tell me he's not running. But then some other friends, some citizen, everybody stopped at the store. And politics, it's like a virus. You put a little bit in your ear, it take over your brain. Just I went home, didn't sleep all night, and make the long story short, it's already long. So I went and pulled my petition and run for city council, and the percentage was very high. I won with great percentage, served 8 years, 2 terms as a councilman. And then the people voted to amend the charter to elect a mayor by the people. And at that time, the mayor is a friend of mine, but we have a few issues in the city we totally different on. So I went to talk to him, and he would not budge. So I told him, well, you know, I'm running for the position because of those issues, not because you bad mayor. So I won the election against him 52 days after 9/11. And too much concern, and my friend, family, everybody thought after 9/11, you know, how somebody with, you know, there's nothing you don't know about me. My life was open book in the city of Wayne. The newspaper wrote, you know, I have an article about my life story from South Lebanon to Africa to the United States, my religion, my color, my name, everything. And then during the election, people want to know why L. People call me L in short. I really answered him with the truth. I told him, you know, my grandfather's name Abdul, and I'm honored to have that name. My father decided to keep his father's name in the family, and he gave me the honor to carry that name. In my American name, it's L. I'm very proud of it. I have the best of both worlds. And if you have a problem with that, I don't know what to tell you. You know, it's so if you're voting for name or you're voting for me. So, but to show you the quality of the community, you know, when we talk about liberty and justice for all, sometimes you could tell if the environment it's right or wrong. And I was probably the only Muslim family in the city of Wayne. I was not elected by support of the Muslim or Arab American community. And city of Wayne, well, they're diverse. Have Christian, have Jewish, and eventually it have a Muslim. I live over there. So the issue is the community know me based on my reputation, based on my love to the community, because I always tell them the way I see things. Wrong or right, it's the way I see it. And you be the judge. Give me the direction of that. So we faced a lot of challenges in the community. After the first election by the populists, some people, you know, one newspaper fact, I'll be one-term mayor because of my ethnicity or my religion. And here, 22 years, I'm still there, you know. So I can thank the city. The city of Wayne made this mayor. I was not in my American dream to be in the political arena. As you see, I got involved and it snowballed, and I'm proud of my community. And I hope one day they remember me by the guy who was really always put their interest above all. My concern and my job is to look after the vital services in the community and spend their tax dollar in the right way. Here I am here today. I want to thank you for giving me this opportunity and thank the center for inviting me. And I hope we continue to be role model for everybody, not for the Muslim only. We're there to prove ourselves for the future.
Mayor Smith, how did you catch that virus that Mayor Allen described?
Well, it's very interesting. So I was born in 1957, so I lived through the turbulent time of the 1960s. And I also was born in the city of Newark, where we had the urban rebellion take place. So all of these congruent forces shaped my social thinking. And then around, it's about 13 years old, the movement that birthed Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali, which many Islamic scholars challenged its Islamic authenticity, but it was the first place I got introduced to Islam through. And it was also a very militant organization. And so during that period of American history, where African Americans had really major challenges around racial discrimination and so forth, I dove into that movement as a young teenager. And the year that I graduated from high school, the leader of that movement died. And the imam who took over that community was named Warathdeen Muhammad and began to teach us traditional Islam. But during that time, I was developing a kind of a real social consciousness, a real activist consciousness. And in college, I got involved in student government. And then after college, got involved on the local level in a whole host of things, particularly the development of African-American-owned businesses. I just got engaged in a number of community activities, and so one thing led to another. I bought a house in my community at a very young age. I was involved in several kinds of businesses. And when I bought my home there, I decided to get very involved locally. And so one of our mentors was a Muslim who was very engaged in politics, and his name was, and he's the council president now where I serve as mayor, is the Honorable D. Bilal Beasley. So he was organizing locally and got me engaged in that process. And we elected the first African-American mayor of our city, a gentleman by the name of Mike Steele. And I worked on that campaign, and one of my businesses, I had a PR firm, and so we got very involved in that campaign. And he asked me to come on board as his chief of staff. So I got a chance to see what the mayor does in a very intimate way. And so in 1994, when this mayor ran for re-election, he didn't win. And so I went to focus on my business for a couple of years. And so in 1996, some people in the community came to me and said, "You were really great in the mayor's office. We'd like you to consider running for a vacant at-large council seat," where one of the individuals, his name was Pat McNally, got elected to a county position. He became the Essex County clerk, and he had 2 years left in his term as a council member at large. So I said to some of my friends, I said, I had learned a little bit about politics being in the mayor's office. I said, well, you know, you got to have some resources if you're going to run for office. If y'all really serious, you know, put together a fundraiser and I'll consider it. So they did. And we had a good turnout. And I said, oh, wow, maybe I can do this. And so we ran in 1996 for a vacant council member at large seat, which I won. And I got reelected to that same seat in 1998. And my colleagues picked me as president of the municipal council. And so in 2002, my mayor had got into some trouble. There was a vacant seat for the mayor's office. I had served in the mayor's office as a chief of staff, have served as council president. For the next progression for me was in politics was to run for the office of the mayor. And I took on that challenge in 2002. I've been mayor ever since. And so in 2002, I won a very hard-fought election against a state legislator who wanted to be a state legislator and a mayor at New Jersey. At that time, you could do that.
Same time.
Yeah, you could do it at the same time. But I won. I prevailed. A very tight, hard-fought election. And then in 2006, I had the best election I could ever face, because I was unopposed.
Oh, that's everybody's favorite opponent.
I woke up in the morning knowing the outcome, and then in 2010, I won my third. I'm the first mayor in our history to get 3 terms, and contemplating a 4th term as well in 2014. So that's kind of my story.
Thank you. Well, you know, you brought up the 60s and the birth of some of your influences in the 60s. As a committed news junkie, during the break, I checked the headlines, and some of you may know that a new pope has been selected, even though we don't know who it is yet. Maybe some of you do if you've been cheating. But, you know, it reminded me, this free association here in the 60s, the Archbishop of Buenos Aires. Okay, there we go. We have breaking news here. If you're watching on the webcast, don't break away.
The white smoke has come out.
Well, you know, what I was thinking about is in the 1960s, John F. Kennedy running for president and had to answer a lot of questions about his religion in the same way that you are today. And Councilman Jackson, you made the point that, you know, when you got into politics, you weren't thinking of yourself as a Muslim politician, or you were just thinking of yourself as a person this is where your interests were taking you. And so my question is, at what moment for each of you in your public life did you realize you were a Muslim politician? You know what and whether in a positive way or a negative way, when did this first occur to you that this was either an asset or a liability or a little of both?
Never entered my mind at all. I'm a Muslim, and you know, I was not running around the street running for office saying, I'm a Muslim, vote for me, I'm a Muslim. No, I was a parent activist fighting for education. I filed a lawsuit on behalf of the children of New York City, and part of that lawsuit walked 150 miles from New York to Albany to publicize the lawsuit, and we won billions of dollars for our children. But
when did someone, I mean, that's you from your perspective, for somebody from the external perspective, when did someone say something to you or challenge you or say anything that made you realize they were viewing you perhaps differently because of your faith?
Sure. I think that some people knew that I was a Muslim, and it was never an issue that came to my attention, but we were in the city council were considering a resolution taking a position against the war in Iraq. And I was supposed to go on Brian Lara on 820 public radio to talk about education. And I was with Senator Bill Perkins, my colleague, who's now a New York State Senator. And so we pulled over in order for me to call in at the time I was supposed to. And I never got to talk about education. But the discussion that was taking place was, why hasn't the city council passed a resolution against the war in Iraq when over 125 other municipalities around the country had? And I think I said at that time that some of the members had issues and concerns of that, and I think I may have mentioned my colleague Gail Brewer and Bill de Blasio, which has a large Jewish population. And I believe I said that that if we pass this resolution, the current administration, I think the Bush administration, would not like that because it may have a negative impact on the relationship in the Middle East with the State of Israel. And at that point in time, the phones, I understood later, lit up on the Brian Lara show. And so, and in fact, some people in my community and where I live at, there are synagogues, 5 of them within 3 blocks of where I live. Some people call me I'm anti-Semitic, I'm anti-Jewish. That's when it really hit me, I guess, loud and clear. But several of my colleagues in the city council, like Councilmember Lou Fidler of Brooklyn, who is Jewish, and Councilmember Oliver Capel, who was a former state attorney general for the state of New York, who's now a member of the city council, and they stood up loud and clear. They said, listen, I've known Robert Jackson since we've been in the city council, whether it was 8 years or 6 years, and I know he's not anti-Semitic, and I know he's not anti-Jewish. So, I mean, they stood up loud and clear for me, and then we got involved with some organizations, and I've been to Israel on 3 different occasions by United Jewish organizations and UJA. And when I came back, the Riverdale Press, which is mainly Riverdale Press, is up in Riverdale, but there's a lot of Jewish individuals that live up there. They asked me about my trip and what have you, and I said if I had the opportunity to go to the West Bank or Gaza, I would go, because the only way to promote peace is through dialogue. So that was the real experience that I had, where I got some negative reaction to me being a Muslim.
Okay. Mayor Hamidudin, same question. When did someone draw to your attention that you were a Muslim politician in a way that was either positive or negative?
I think that, you know, in terms of my election, it wasn't really an issue. Teaneck there's something in the water of Teaneck that, you know, it was home to the Jewish community when there were deed restrictions. It was home to the African American community when there were deed restrictions. It was the first township to voluntarily integrate the school systems. So we're like an incubator for understanding. And there's a reason why my family, you know, and other Muslim families chose to live there. But during the election, I think that, you know, there was a couple of interesting things that happened. I think that one was, you know, one woman who was very prominent in the community wanted to talk to me, and she came up to me, and we had coffee together, and she was just very uncomfortable with trying to figure out, you know, she's heard a lot about what Muslims believe, and she was like very nicely trying to say, but don't you, you know, like, don't you guys want to kill me? You know, like, it's like, and it was but it was so nice the way she was saying it. Like, she didn't want to be insulting, and she was like, but, you know, and I explained to her, I said, listen, you know, I pray 5 times a day. I try to pray 5 times a day. And I pray for my cousins. You know, I pray for the children and the descendants of Abraham. And we're allowed to marry the children of Abraham. We're allowed to marry people of the book, and all of these similarities that we have in our religion. And I started saying, like, you know, I believe in going to heaven. You know, I believe that there is a God. And I explained that, you know, I'm not killing anybody, nor do I want to kill anybody. So I think that was one person that I think that I had to have a one-on-one conversation with. Did
you convince her?
Yeah, she's one of my biggest supporters.
Yeah.
And that's the conversations that you have when you're in public life that you get to have over and over and over again to be an ambassador for your faith and who you are. And I think that there was another interesting story that, you know, we get a real kick out of talking, me and my deputy mayor, who happens to be from the Orthodox observant Jewish community, where when before you run for council, you have to get 250 signatures on a petition to say that you can run. And we didn't know how this was going to work. Could a guy named Muhammad and post 9/11 get elected, and what the reaction's going to be? So we were outside of a synagogue, and a prominent member of the synagogue comes out. And at the time, I was running with an African-American deacon, an observant Jewish person, and myself. And we come out, and he looks at my friend. I see it out of the corner of my eye, where my friend goes up to him to get my signature, and he shakes his head no. And all of a sudden, everybody, you know, like the whole team takes a deep breath. And we take a deep breath because we didn't know what was going to happen. You know, they were worried how I was going to react, what it meant to the ticket. And, you know, my friend says to him, look, just sign. You don't have to vote for him. He's standing right there. Look at what we're trying to work together with everybody. And then he proceeds to take the piece of paper, signs his name, and gives it back to him. And my friend looks at it, and lo and behold, he signed my name, but he didn't sign for the observant Jewish candidate. Huh. And why is that? And he said, look, that guy talks in shul, meaning that guy talks in synagogue. And as far as he knows, I never spoke in synagogue. So he signed my, it's very humorous if you're from Teaneck. I guess it just went over everybody's head. But it's very humorous if you're from Teaneck. And at that point, though, we realized that we had something here, that people will vote and talk and sign about issues rather than the politics of race and religion.
It's nice, and also a great part of the story is if you're going to deal with ignorance from a constituent, at least it could be polite ignorance.
Yeah.
Ask if you want to kill me with a smile on your face. Mayor Hayes, tell us about the first time that someone, you know, not your own feelings about your faith, but the first time that you had to deal with it as a public figure or as a candidate, that someone suggested to you either that they viewed it as a positive or as a negative.
I mentioned before the city of Wayne, well diverse. It have a Jewish, it have a Christian, and when I decide to run, I sit down and I look into the list of board and commission members in the community. Those represent the whole community. You have 150 person who volunteer to do work in the city, and they all from the business community, from the industrial, you know, well-diverse group. I felt I want to start communicate with every one of them in person. So came to a person, he's a Jewish, Nathan Weiser, well-known. He used to be on the city council. He owned a steel industry. So I called him, I told him we need to sit down and talk. He said, come on over. So I went over there. And I told him I'm looking for support. He told me, I was hoping you run, because I'm going to support you. I told him, you know, I have a little concern about ethnicity. And he said, you know what? You've been here for more than 22 years. You prove yourself to me. It means you prove yourself to the other. If I was you, I would not have that fear. If somebody asks you, you always been telling the truth. So he gave me good advice, and I left his place a little bit comfortable. You know, we have to face reality in this country. You have some hidden discrimination. No matter what you tell me, sometimes there's something inside of you nobody know but you. But there's some people, they do not resist the occasion to bring their true color out. And a few times, I have a few people address the issue, but not loud, not something to hurt my feeling. You know, one guy asked me, and he said, well, how you think you're gonna be elected in non-Muslim community? Even in Dearborn, when they have a big population, they've not been able to elect mayor. I told him, well, I'm not running for the mayor's position in Dearborn. I'm running in Wayne, and I'm asking you for your support. He said, you're not going to get it. I said, thank you. But I hope you're in the minority. And we laughed, and I left. I never allow it to be heated discussion, because I'm not in business to sell religion or promote religion. I'm in business to volunteer to a position to serve my community. So I felt if I can't take the heat and accept the people's feeling, no matter what, if it's something I like or something I don't like, when you in the top position, when the community give you the honor to be their leader and make a vital decision, so then you have to rise above all those negative feeling, even if they minority or majority. And I was hoping one day I could change their mind. My job is to set a precedent. As a Muslim American, I have the right any other American have, but I want to prove to everybody we're good American, we part of the system, and I hope our kids have the same feeling, because I don't want my son or my daughter live as a stranger in their own homeland. But what I do, it will reflect on them in the future. If I was a good mayor, then everybody relax. Say, yeah, this Muslim did a good job. So it was not, in my case, it was very positive story. I really don't have negative issue to where I could tell you something hurt my feeling in that issue, or my kids in the school. I have 5 kids, God bless me with 5 of them, and they grow up in environment. You know, they're little jokes sometimes, kids throw at each other, somebody call me a name by certain way. I tell them, you know what, it's normal. Every ethnicity in this country went through that. The Irish American went through that. The Italian. Look at the history of this country. We not new to those negative minority individuals. So I consider my situation as a Muslim American, it's a great experience. I can't thank the community for my political success enough.
Mayor Smith?
Yeah, this is encouraging, and it says a lot about the promise of America, that individuals in this room, particularly on the local level, can transcend what the majority population may sometimes feel. So, and I'll give an example. I never had an overt attack about my religion, but people have tried to use it in a whisper campaign, because your predominantly voters in our community are Christian. Mm-hmm. And so they try to create a wedge issue, but a lot of times the leadership of the various churches saw your work. They saw how ecumenical you tried to deal. You were fair dealing in all of your actions as a government person. So, and you have to make sure that you outreach and visit various religious persuasions that are outside of your own. And people, you can overcome what I call the whisper campaigns that people will traditionally do. I think America has grown to extent, at least in the neighborhoods in New Jersey, particularly urban centers, where Muslims are a common occurrence. It's not a big deal. However, people will try to use subversive subterranean tactics to try to use it against you. But if your work ethic and your service can overcome all of that.
Mm-hmm. I think if you look at public opinion polling, the worst thing to be when we're talking about religion in American politics as a candidate is an atheist. Mm-hmm. It seems like American voters want some religion involved in and that leads to the equation of what they want. And some of you have addressed this at least briefly, but if we could go through the panel again and address, how does your religion inform your public life? Is it a factor, or is it not? Or do you try to kind of have a division of church and state in your own head?
For me, I go back to what our colleague said, David Shahid, with respect to, You know, my religion is of who I am and my life. So, for example, when a colleague indicated that they had an open house for him and invited you over, and I know that in the population in the United States, many people eat a lot of pork, and so I have to automatically ask what's being served, because we don't eat pork or pork products as Muslims. And so for me, it really hasn't really shaped my legislative aspect as far as me doing my job, because my job is to represent the people in my district. And I took a poll, a survey, and the issues that impact my people, as what the response was jobs, education, affordable housing, good health care, immigration reform, safety and security. Those are the issues that my constituents are concerned with, and that's my concern. Religion doesn't really come into play in the city council overall as far as any of the issues that I deal with.
Of the people you deal with, the press, constituents, funders, fellow politicians, of any of those groups, which is most likely to bring up your faith as in any way?
I think the press, because
sort of novelty.
No, I mean it's something that I don't hide. So if they just do a little research on it, it's right there.
Right,
I mean,
right.
it's a fact of a part of who I am. But like in running for Manhattan Borough President, I went in front of the real estate board. There's 60 people there. They never said, "Well, what religion are you?" No. They want to know.
The press likes to do that thing, you know, and I consider myself to some degree a member of the press, so I'm biting the hand that feeds in a way. But you know that as a Muslim American, they suddenly try to make you a spokesperson for an entire diverse group of people.
Well, clearly I'm not a spokesperson for the Muslim population. I'm a spokesperson for myself.
But have you encountered that? Have they tried to ask you to be a spokesperson?
You know, I think that they will ask me my opinion as a Muslim, and I think I've expressed that. I can't really remember an example, but I don't shy away from who I am. I don't shy away the fact that I was born and raised in New York City in a family of 9 and grew up on welfare. And out of 9 of us, only 2 graduated from college. My brother has 5 children, I have 3, and 7 out of 8 graduated from college. And I make the point that education is the key to uplift all people. It doesn't matter what your religion, your nationality, black, yellow, green, it doesn't matter. Education is the key. So I try to communicate going back to the issues and concerns that impact me in my life and also the people that I represent.
Back to the original question, how your faith informs your public life, if it does.
I think there's, for me, again, my faith is for me, and when I'm speaking about my faith and my interpretations of my faith is what I bring to the table. And you know, Islamic concept, liberty and justice for all, equality, is something that I hold dear to my heart, which makes it easy to serve everybody in an equal way. I think the question that some people in the press, and I don't know if this is do you see contradictions between your faith and the Constitution of the United States of America? And again, my understanding, my interpretation is that as Muslims living in a non-Muslim country, it is our religious obligation to obey the laws of this country. So when I take an oath to the Constitution of the United States of America, I'm doing my religious duty also. So I don't see any contradiction between religion and a secular democracy. But my faith that I have a need to serve. I have a need to pay back the people like Mr. Jackson and David Shahid and Wayne Smith, who've done so much for people like myself to make it easier for me to be mayor. Because I can tell you, you know, whenever I sit down and cry about what I'm doing, it's nothing to compare to what Mr. Jackson has gone through or Wayne Smith has gone through. And thank you for all that you have done. And I think that this is the reason why we do the work that we do from a Muslim perspective, because the work itself is the reward.
Mm-hmm. You know, I'm having such a deja vu flashback of it when John Kennedy answering questions about whether, you know, he'd be taking secret instructions from the Pope, and now you have to answer questions about whether Sharia law is going to, you know, subvert the U.S. Constitution. It's the same old. We just changed the details generationally. But back to the question, the premise of whether your faith is a factor, a major factor in how you conduct yourself as an elected official.
Well, you know, first thing in Islam, their very important message is you abide by the land law, by the law of the land you live in. It's one. That should eliminate any question about whatever Islam wanted to put the Sharia law or not the Sharia law. It's not the issue. How I conduct my business, like I told you before, every city have a charter. The state have the Constitution. We have the national Constitution. We have a law. If you elected official, you have to abide by the rule and enforce the rules and the law to the best way you can, and try to lead by example. You don't want to lead by your self-interest or religion interest. You have to live by the national and your community's interest. And you have to have that line in between. Your faith, it's for you. You have the freedom of religion. You worship the way you like, but you run the city business the way the law allows you to run it. And as you know, it's not only religion. You have many elected officials who did excellent job, and you have some elected officials who really did everything wrong under the sun.
We know a little about that here in Washington.
So it's or you do the right thing or you're not doing the right thing. And I hope as a Muslim elected official, we will set example as we can do the right thing, and we'll be taking the path to great leadership like any other American. We're part of a great society. We're in the greatest country on earth, and I told the mayors, with no offense, I live in the greatest city in America. The city
we have no way of quantifying that.
So
your civic pride is admirable.
Yeah. I don't think my faith is an issue. I don't think my community see it as issue, and I hope everybody in the nation will follow that example.
Mayor Smith.
Yeah, I think I just want to ditto everything that's been said thus far. With one caveat, I think your value system does drive some of your priorities. And so one of the priorities in public life for me is to always try to see what I can do for the disadvantaged, for the locked out, for the poor. So to the extent that government can be used to do those kinds of things, and I think that's driven by some of my religious values as well. I also think that we have an obligation to work across faith lines where we can do interfaith work, and I think that's very important for a government official as well. And obviously we have to follow the law of the land as well. So those people without faith at all, we still have to embrace and do what the government services require that they're entitled to have and to do. But if you look at from the religious sphere, and there's a whole lot of discussion about religion in the public square these days, the Abrahamic faiths, if you will, have more in common. Theologically, there are differences, but the core issues of respect for one God, the giving of charity, or zakat, if we would say zakat, all those things are common themes that no matter what your religious point of view, are embraced by all people.
Father Abraham had many sons. I know that song.
Yeah.
Let's reverse the order. I'll begin with you this time, Mayor Smith, on my next question, and then we're going to turn to you for your questions and your comments. That's see, I know it's always tough when you go last. You're always in that position to say, "Well, ditto." They said it. I'm not going to say it again. So we'll start with you. look, all of you have had, the fact that you're elected to office says something about the communities you come from. A certain progressiveness when it comes to diversity or tolerance or however you want to frame it. But we have seen a 9/11 effect, and we have seen a rise of Islamophobia, not just in this country, but in many parts of the world. And you see it too. And so my question is, as the role model question was answered by the two judges in the last panel, and whether you accept that or not as a public figure, any of us who step in front of any sort of public forum, that is imposed upon us to some degree, in all of your cases to a significant degree. So I'm wondering, as a Muslim American politician, when you see Islamophobia, even when it's not directed at you, do you have any special sense of responsibility that you need to address it, that you need to be part of the solution?
Well, I mean, the same zeal that anybody that gets discriminated against is what comes to bear. So, whether it is based on race, sexual orientation, any of that, you can't discriminate against people in the civil law of this country. And so at the outrage of anybody being discriminated against, whether it's on a religious framework or any other, should cause outrage for all of us. And so that's the struggle in America, to establish a more perfect union, that we fight against those things that create discrimination on all of its fronts. And so, if we go with that ethos, and whether it was gender-based discrimination, racial-based discrimination, religious discrimination, if we fight those wherever they rise their ugly heads, we'll have a common theme to make our country greater and grow better.
Mayor Haydes.
Well, I really do enjoy the way we deal with our issues in this country. We debate issue, the media work. Sometimes you claim the media, sometimes you don't, uncertain effect. I dealt with the media on many occasions. In the past, I find out the best policy, not the media, anything you do, when you sit down and you face the public or question media or non-media, is to come up with the truth. They cannot twist the truth. They cannot change the truth. The truth, always the truth. As a dealing with the issue of the negative, what you call reaction sometime on the American Muslim, it's wrong, because we don't support the terrorism. We don't support the extremist. But if somebody wanted to label us, we should react with the truth, because that would divide us as American. It make you and me fighting together, and it's what they like to see in America. As we united, we stand. How can they divide us? They have to bring some sensitive issue, because even the sometimes there's some different country in the Middle East, the Arab country and Israel always fighting, and I always hope they would see us as a model in this country, how the Jewish individual support Muslim for the mayor's position and judge's position, and whatever the position it is, how we work together. We see each other for our accomplishment. If I see you as a positive person, I'm gonna react and support you based on that positive I see from you. So I see sometimes the media get a little bit exaggerated, and I was hoping always, somebody would ask the question to somebody who qualified to answer it. And anytime some negative news about the Muslim come, they find somebody who doesn't know anything about the issue, and they put the mic in front of his face, tell us what do you think about this. And I feel like it's not been fair to the Muslim community to get opinion from Muslim who's not qualified. I'm not qualified to speak about religion in deep way. I'm not scholar. I'm not imam. I know my faith. I abide by the rule, but I'm not qualified. So I wish the media start to get qualified people on who in the, sometimes it's very difficult to find in the Muslim community who's the leader. We still a little bit behind on this, there are too many leaders. But they should find qualified people to get their opinion, to bring the positive message to the rest of the country, and that would help.
Mixing metaphors, I say amen to that, Mayor Al. Some better spokespersons. Whether it comes from pontificating politicians or demagogues in media or hate groups, when you see Islamophobia, do you feel some responsibility that you have your own bully pulpit? Do you feel any special responsibility to get involved?
It's interesting. Like in 2011, during Ramadan, I gave a speech about Fox News. It was right coming out of Park 51, and I told everybody to relax, take it easy. 2012 was a very different speech that I gave in Ramadan because at that point, the law, even though people were discriminating against Park 51 being built, the law is what upheld, and it was fine. But then in 2012, you saw, the NYPD actively spying on Muslims. Now, this was something that at that point, that's when you can't stay quiet. And that's when you really have to understand that, we are a nation of laws. And what the NYPD was doing was absolutely wrong. And people paid dearly to make sure that these subversive tactics didn't happen before. And I think that those are times when I really have to, insert myself into the conversation that actually takes away from my municipal duties, because you're kind of going on a tangent of changing soda, like that's what you're kind of doing. So in that response, I find it's my constitutional duty to really jump in on that. And I think that the cottage industry. I don't know if a lot of people have ever read Fear Inc. The Center for American Progress, I think, put a nice booklet out together. It's a cottage industry that people make money off of, and they put a lot of bad information there. It comes from foundations to the money, to the foundations, to Frank Gaffney, to Michelle Bachmann, and that's how you get these stories out there. And in 2010, if had I known that me becoming mayor would have been an international story, that I would have been on the front page of, the Jewish Standard and the Jerusalem Post and the Jeddah News and the Hyderabad Deccan Chronicle, I don't know if I would have jumped in there. I can be honest to that.
More than you bargained for.
Yeah, it would have been more because it was funny because I just got awarded from a synagogue for a Tribute of Human Service Award because of the work that I did during Sandy, the night of Sandy. The Superstorm Sandy, my second child was born. And I went to the hospital. My wife gave birth. She did all the hard work. And then the next day, I was on Facebook, Twitter, all around town, attending to my town. And on my Facebook page, and this was written in the Huffington Post, all throughout the comments were either Mazel Tov or Mashallah. And a blogger looked at it and she had to write about it, and it was something that again, like I'm living my life right now, so it's hard for me to take a step back to see what kind of impact that this will have. Where the kids who live in my town who see me and their eyes light up and they're like, "Oh, he's Muslim, Assalamu alaikum," and when I come to the schools, what that impact is. But I make the time to go to the schools. I see a lot more kids running for student government. I see a lot more kids in Sunday school asserting themselves because ideally in nature, especially from the South Asian and Arab perspective, your father is, the paternal person in the household, and kids are to be seen and not heard. And, if your father said, "Hey, it's dark outside," you would say, "Yes, Baba, it's dark outside." and that's the way we were raised. And now you see people getting into, challenging the norm. So when you look at it, it's like, because again, when I ran for office the first time, the established Muslim community, quote unquote, photo op uncle or political leaders laughed and said I was going to lose. And that's usually the things that, keep happening with us, where in America, I think that children who are born here, who go through the public school system, know that our possibilities are limitless, and this is a great country, that there is no ceiling for where you want to go. So my job is to kind of make a bridge between those two communities, to let kids know that, hey, look, you can make your parents' dream and come true and become a doctor, but you could also own the hospital, and that's something that I think that they need to really strive to get to the next level of becoming leaders in this country.
Councilman Jackson, before we get to the more serious question about your sense of responsibility when you face Islamophobia, directly or indirectly, His Honor brought up soda. I have to ask you, are you with the mayor? Are you with Mayor Bloomberg or not on this soda question? No, you want your big gulps.
In fact, I've signed on as amicus brief against the ban in court because it's about, freedom of me determining what I want to purchase. That's what it's about. But let me just say that the Muslim Holiday Coalition in New York City came together, and these are religious leaders from all religions and unions and advocacy groups, and said that the New York City school population of 1.1 million, over 12% are Muslims. And as a result of that, they were asked to put forward a resolution as the only Muslim in the city council, and as the chair of the education, a resolution asking the city council to express its will to the mayor to incorporate our Eid holidays into the school calendar. Finally, we got a vote on that, and it passed unanimously. And in fact, some people said, well, one person said nay. And the City Council of New York, when we vote on a resolution, if you vote nay, you have to get out of your chair and go to the clerk and said, I want my vote counted as no. That's the rules. If you don't do that, your nay vote is automatically a yes vote. So one individual said nay, and so when we were going around communicating that the resolution passed, they said, well, one person voted no. I said, no, it was unanimous, because our rules indicate, and every member knows that's what you have to do. So it was a unanimous vote. But they selected me because I'm the only Muslim and I chair the education committee. And that was all in the news about me being the Muslim and moving that forward. But also, we were at a budget hearing last, I think, May or June, and the issue of public safety and the surveillance of Muslims. And obviously, I was communicating with Ray Kelly, who's the commissioner, about surveillance of Muslims, about stop, question, and frisk. And so one of the things I said, well, I'm a Muslim. I want to know whether or not I'm under surveillance. As the only Muslim in the city council, he said, do you have any unpaid parking tickets? But obviously, the whole issue of surveillance is a huge issue in our community. And in fact, I was online this morning, and the New York Post has an editorial about that. So if you haven't seen it, go online and read it. And basically, it talks about the fact that there are Muslims that say we are Americans, and that we want our city and our municipalities and our country to remain safe. And I was telling the reporter that you cannot paint all Muslims with the same brush, because certain Muslims do certain things that are negative in bombing and killings. Just like the bombing in, I forgot what state, was a Christian. We don't paint all Christians with the same brush. We don't do that. And I think that we have to stand up and fight discrimination and racism and sexism wherever it raises its ugly head in order to communicate effectively to all. And so one of the things that was up in the news recently was the fact that there is a brand new, the first Muslim Democratic Club that's being formed in New York City. And there were articles about that, and they mentioned me as the only Muslim in the city council as an elected public official. And so all for the past year, we were passing these around, which basically says the New York Muslim Voter and Information Club. And we're asking people to sign up and join. And so I was watching New York One, which is our station in New York City. It's a political station. And last night, it asked the question of, I guess, of a consulting company that deals with elections and what have you. How many Muslims are there registered in New York City? And the response was that the response was there are 76,332 voters in New York City with a likely Muslim surname in the voters file. With a likely Muslim surname in the voters file. So that's what the information was. But this is about empowerment, coming together as Muslims and electing people that's going to best represent us and the issues and concerns that we have. And I think that's empowerment, and that's very important for me overall.
We should do a little business now before I take your questions. Just for, Councilman, they say time waits for no man, and nor does Amtrak in this case. It is 4:25, so you can give us the cue when you need to exit. And, and I might suggest that when you ask your questions, if you identify yourself, and also if you can direct it to one of our panelists. And my hot tip is, I know one who needs to leave soon, so if you have a question for him, that may be the way you want to go. Who is first question or comment? And again, in both cases, we ask you to be direct and brief with those. Anyone? Yes, sir. We'll get your microphone once again. Please, for the benefit of those watching via webcast, you do need a mic. Hi.
My name is Murat from Zakat Foundation of America. It's a charity organization based in Chicago and Delaware. And I was also, when I was young, I was in the youth campaign of the Tayyip Erdogan when I was in the 89 and those times. When I come to the U.S., I always interested in the politics. And I also, now I have my kids, I try to encourage them to you should run for politics. But among the Muslim community, there are a lot of people just say, it's a haram and those kind of things. You probably heard that one. But we have, as a Muslim and also running a Muslim organization, we have a responsibility to help people like you who are representing Muslims in a good way. And I just want to ask you a question, what can we do, a Muslim, so you can do your job better, so that more young children can become like yours? This is all of you, I guess.
Besides voting for them, right?
Besides voting, yes. Besides voting.
Let me put this very as directly as I can. That we have a lot of talented Muslim politicians. To my right is Robert Jackson.
But first, I'm not a politician. I'm an elected public official. That's the difference. I'm an elected, and so I was going to tell the moderator, I'm sorry, Mohammed, to cut you off, that I'm not a politician. I'm an elected public official, and I communicate that loud and clear to people. Elected by the people that I represent. I'm an elected
Understand the
public official,
distinction, and
I'm
thank you
proud
for
of who I am, and that's why I wear this button that says I'm a city council member. And when I'm elected a Manhattan Borough President, I will wear a button every day because I'm proud of who I am. I'm sorry, Mohammed.
And on that note, I was going to tell you that he's running, and what we really need is one of the hardest things to do in politics is raise money. And Mr. Jackson and Wayne Smith has been on the front lines of this for the last 20 some odd years. And as a community, we really have to recognize where our issues are and who has money and who doesn't have money. And what are the distinctions between our communities, between the South Asian community, the African American community, and the Arab community, and really start working together to put a positive message together. Because we are so broken up along ethnic lines that it's absolutely the antithesis of Islam, and it actually disgusts me on a lot of levels. And when people talk about the youth, I think that John Esposito said it best at Congress when I saw him speak. In the Muslim community, if you're involved in the youth movement, it's great because you're in the youth movement till you're 70. And until we have real leadership pipeline dialogues, until we really start passing down the information, until we really start passing down the money and investing it in kids who can take us to the higher, to take this not only the Muslim community but the country to higher levels, I think that we're going to still always be in this circular discussion in 5 years from now, talking about, what are we going to talk to do to combat Islamophobia.
May I quickly, if you don't mind?
Of course.
So another example is in New York City, everybody's up for election or re-election, and we have a Muslim that is running in the 7th Councilmatic District where I currently serve. I'm the council member, Ziad Ramadan. He's a candidate, and there's one of 13 candidates. And you get involved in your community. So Ziad Ramadan is a Palestinian who immigrated here with him and his parents, and he was on our community board, and he was elected the chair of the community board representing our particular area. He is on the empowerment board of our community of all of Northern Manhattan. He is the chair, and I'm the vice chair of the Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz Educational and Cultural Center. He is the chair of NOMA, the Northern Manhattan Arts Alliance. So getting involved in your community and helping your community grow from the arts or music or sports, things like that, then you will play leadership roles, hopefully, and maybe then the community, as with the mayor, he got involved in many things, and when he ran for office, everyone knew that he was involved in all aspects of life and that he was working on behalf of everyone. And that's very, very important.
Something just triggered in my mind. It always bothered me. When you mention is somebody told you it's haram to get in the politics, it's prohibited and it's wrong. That's why Islam suffer from many cultural negative mixed to the religion in different country, and I'm not gonna mention because every Muslim country have some cultural mixed into the religion to where sometimes we confuse the people to understand Islam. Because you find many different countries have a different issue, and when I sit down and listen to those rules, and I feel like it's not Islamic philosophy, that it's cultural from that nation. So the Muslim have some work to do and enhance the image, the terrorism or the radicalism created. And then there's some media built on it, some media not, but it's the job on us sometime to come out loud and clear to show that it's Islamic and that it's not Islamic. That philosophy you can't run for politics because, you know, if people talk about politics as a bad game, Councilman, I know you a public servant and I'm proud of you and I respect you, but the politic, it's depend on the politician. If you're a good politician, it's good politics. Politician make the politic good or bad. If you're a good politician, you should be proud of your politic and see it as a positive. And if you're a bad politician, then it's a bad politic. So we can't deny all the elected officials, we politicians. We politic for our computer. So that's why.
We're just running the bumper sticker, politicians gave politics a bad name. That's why we
But, you know, on the other hand, in this country, there are too many heroes, great politicians who we remember, and we want ourselves or our kids to follow their path. So let's not get the thing lost because a few politicians given politics bad name, but we still have to recognize the good politicians who give politics good name.
One bad apple, right?
Yeah, so I would just to echo some of the comments my colleagues have made. You know, getting engaged in the community where you are, even getting engaged in the community where you're not, where you have either intellectual capital that you can help Muslim elected officials or that community, whether it's through some charitable work, some intellectual work, some medical assistance, whatever you can that can provide maybe some service that helps that person's particular community. Now, let me just say this as an elected official.
Not a politician?
You know, I'm a politician too. I'm a politician too. There's nothing wrong with politics.
Thank you, Councilman. Safe trip home.
It's the art and science of human relations. That's all. Politics, that's all it is. You got to get to the definition. But I will say this because he made me almost lose my thought with that comment.
He's gone now. We can rally.
Okay. So the other thing I would mention is that getting engaged in politics is not necessarily a bad thing. In academic institutions in corporate America, it is the art and science of human relations. And so you've got to get engaged in that business. And all due respect to the councilman that he's gone, he's a public elected official because some politicians got together and helped him get elected. And so that's
You know, I teach a class on politics and media, and I always ask my students at the beginning of a semester, how many of you are interested in politics? And it's 1 or 2. Mm-hmm. And then how many are interested in democracy? And it's the majority. Mm-hmm. And Robert Reich, former Clinton administration cabinet member, his definition that he likes to use is that politics is democracy applied. Right. So if you look at it that way, it might change your perceptions as well. And yes, sir, you're next, and then, ma'am, we'll come to you. We have 2 questions on that side of the room.
Thank you. My name is Khazar Hussain. I'm with American Muslim Health Professionals. My question is directed to Mayor Smith. Mm-hmm. You had mentioned your time as a campaign manager, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Robbing the campaign.
And I wanted to know, during that campaign, if you ever wrestled with ethics, and was that a difficult process? And I guess the follow-on question is, do you see more Muslims being involved in the campaign process to get others elected?
Well, we should be. I think that's the challenge that Muhammad and we're trying to encourage in this last segment of conversation. You bring, and this is where you get to the point of values. You're going to pick a candidate that reflects your values. And so the question of ethics, if a person takes a position that you find unethical, you're not going to support that candidate. That's just plain and simple. But in order to influence the process, to get your ideas heard, to get some of your positions talked about or even thought about, is you've got to be engaged in the business of politics. Ideas and good public policy come from people trying to influence the process. Elected officials will do what they think if they don't hear from the public. And so that's why in this city, which influences this democracy, you got companies and interest groups paying people to lobby and watch this legislative branch of government every day, 24/7. It's an industry. And your profession is affected by it, whether you agree or disagree with the Affordable Health Care Act. But there were tons of people who were against it and tons of people who were for it up here every day trying to get their point of view heard. And if you have a point of view that you think represents and serves your community better, you better be in that business of trying to influence that process.
Yes, ma'am, you're next. Hi.
I am Maggie Siddiqui from the Islamic Society of North America. I'm grateful to all of you for really paving the way and being Muslim representatives in government. And I was also really heartened, Mayor Hamiduddin, by your story about how you see members of the student government starting to kind of step up and run more for student government office, rather. And I was just wondering what impact you have seen within the Muslim community among the young people since you've taken office. What sort of greater interest you've seen in their own interest in serving in a public office, particularly among the girls and young women?
Well, I'm lucky that my sister's daughter's name is Zarina, and my sister was my campaign manager, and she's Mahajaba, and that means she wears the scarf. So it was interesting for her because she sees her mom in this strong role as being the PTO president of 2 schools, who is just as big as influence in TNAC as I am. Our name recognition is on par with each other. And the people that I was talking about student government were majority girls. They're a lot smarter than us boys. And contrary to whatever Islamophobia tries to think, my mother rules my family and my wife tells me what to do most of the time. So I think that what we're seeing slowly but surely is we have to carve out a lot more space for women, not only in masjids and organizations, as well as what you're seeing right now is I'm sure you're seeing a lot of on the ground level of masjids is that you're seeing that, for most part, they're not really too accommodating to American-born Muslims. Like, it's not our cup of tea. So you kind of see these offshoot organizations that are kind of coming up, women organizations. And I think that as we grow and as you see more women role models, you will see a lot more women coming up to the forefront. Like I spoke last year at Emerge, which is a voter advocacy group in Florida last year. And this year, there are keynote speakers, Rashida Tlaib from Michigan. So Rashida from Michigan is doing great work. I mean, she was on, like most people don't know who she is, but she got a lot of, like when the person from Detroit was giving that crazy speech from Michigan, talking about the auto industry, Rashida's face was on, national news the entire time cheering. So we do have not enough women involved yet, but we're slowly but surely seeing women carve out a space in the Muslim community. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
Would you like to hear from the other panelists on this question as well?
Yeah, I won't talk specifically about the Muslim community in this regard, but I will use an example of kind of recent history about youth engagement, whether it's male or female, Muslim, non-Muslim. The 2008 presidential campaign saw an unprecedented number of young people throughout the United States get engaged in the presidential election. It's not happened again. The president didn't get that kind of turnout in the last presidential election, nor after the 2008 election and the midterm congressional elections did that same group of young people come out. So it shows the power of young people when they're fully engaged. They could have changed the dynamic of Congress. They could have changed many gubernatorial races. They could have changed local races in a very significant way around the United States. So the challenge for America is how do we get more young people interested in the public policy questions of the day that affect their lives across the board. And I think if we can get America fully engaged, we'd have and we were having this informally in our luncheon discussion, how do we get just not even young Americans, more Americans engaged in the issues of the day? Well, I think young people bring a whole lot of people with them because they engage their parents, they engage their relatives, they kind of shake up society. We talked about early in our earlier conversation, we talked about what happened during the 1960s. And I think a lot of that was even the civil rights movement. People think the civil rights movement was led by a bunch of old guys. It wasn't. Dr. King and them were very young people, very, very young, who shook up this country. So young people have, if interested and so engaged, the potential to bring this country to a whole different place.
I think I agree with both mayors on this issue. I was asked to speak before a young group in one of the school in the mosque, Muslim school. And there was around 300 students, vary from 12 till 15, 16 years old. And I asked them the question, how many of you, your family took you to a city council meeting or tried to educate you about what's the mayor do? Raise your hand. There was not one hand been risen. So the Muslim community, responsibility for the youth, it's a great responsibility to educate the youth about the process and the government and the effect of being involved and make you care more about the community, broaden yourself, not only your family. So we have that teaching in the mosque to care about everything, but nothing going to the government, local or state or that. It's moving, as you mentioned, Rashida from Michigan. We're very proud of her, but it's very slow involvement. I see in the past some candidate who never been in the political arena. They didn't know anything about the politics. With all fairness, they successful, and they decide to run for position because they have the money and they didn't go anywhere. So be involved in the leadership position. There's some ingredient, there's some point to be checked. You have to be involved. You have to show your ability. And I think the Muslim community, as a new community, it's been considered as a new community in this country. we need more education about the process and how the system works for our youth. And the positive thing is the sky the limit in this country. You know, it's wherever you teach your kids which ladder you want them to climb, that it's a privilege and you could reach your goal. Nothing, it's easy, but you have to work hard, and I hope we have more young people who get educated about the process. And I'm not blaming the youth only, their family too, because the voting percentage in Michigan, and especially in Dearborn, you know, you have a 12, 15,000 Muslim. You're lucky if you get 3,000 get out and vote. So we have a lot of work to do among ourselves, not only dreaming to be, nobody denying us the right to be part of the process. The only thing we have to ignore that negative image somebody tried to label for the Islam and try to prove ourselves by our action. That's how I feel about it.
Also, the negative perception about politics, like your question was, is there some ethical conjuries because you're engaged in politics? Your statement about, is politics haram? So if we think those things about it, we won't vote and we won't participate.
Democracy applied. Democracy applied. Another question. Yes, sir. Right up here, please.
Thank you. My name is Fazli Siddiq, and I'm a professor at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, but this year's Fulbright Research Chair in Canada-US Relations at the Wilson Center. If I may be a devil's advocate just for a moment, and just following up on the moderator's Islamophobia question, which I thought was a really good one. What I've heard this afternoon is a very optimistic characterization of life in the U.S. It's not an inaccurate characterization, but nevertheless an optimistic characterization. And my question is, how would you, as important members of society, elected representatives of the people, elected public officials, people that others look up to, how would you respond to those on the far right? And this number is not insubstantial in the US, far more numerous than the combined population of Jews and Muslims in this country. People like Rush Limbaugh, for example, and he has a reasonable following. How would you respond to these people when they say that this country was founded on Judeo-Christian traditions and that the preservation of Judeo-Christian tradition is very important, and that there has been enough of a dilution, if you will, and that we need to go back to the sort of the old biblical traditions on which the country was founded? And just to follow up on that, even the president has to repeat time and again that he's not a Muslim, that he has no, Muslim connections, other than perhaps some ancestors who might have been, and that he's a church-going Christian, and that this is something that has to be repeated over and over again. And we hear this from Canada, and the world hears this. So I was wondering what your comments were on some of these sort of, very clear perceptions.
I want to thank my friendly neighbor from the north for helping me inject some negativity into the too positive discussion, because it's a burden I don't like to carry alone.
One of the burdens of leadership is that you have an optimistic point of view. Mayors in particular carry that with them. That does not mean we don't see the challenges that are in front of us. So, the part of what we're doing today is to try to dispel that myth by the interests of modern technology. This will be around the world in a few minutes. And I'm sure all of us, when asked, will appear and discuss our point of view. You're not going to convert everybody. You have to convert, in elections, you don't have to get every vote. You just have to get enough to win. And so we have to make sure that we have a society that is fair and decent to all people. I believe in the ethos of America, so we wouldn't struggle every day to try to make it so. So if we look at this country, we went from a place that women couldn't vote and women were second-class citizens, African Americans the same way. Every immigrant that set foot in this country faced that same challenge. I think the good mayor outlined it, whether it was European ethnics or people coming here from Haiti. We all faced that challenge, and the struggle for America is to make sure that as we try to establish a more perfect union, that we fight back those forces of darkness that would try to not let America be the pluralistic society that its founding fathers talked about. So I would say to Rush Limbaugh that America was founded with the idea of religious freedom. And so Quakers and Puritans, who were not your traditional Christians, came to these shores to establish a basis of worship. The founding fathers made it a point not to have the establishment of religion, so that we have the concepts of freedom of religion. Anybody who comes to America can worship any way that he wants. That's the American way of life. And to do anything opposite that would be un-American.
I think really Rush Limbaugh, in my opinion, it's a hopeless case, because you will not convince Rush Limbaugh if you talk to him and your nose touching his nose. He's not hearing you. He will not hear you, because Rush Limbaugh, you know, or you like him or you don't. To waste your time and answer him one-on-one, I would rather to educate the youth. I would rather to send the positive message to the Muslim community to ignore some destructive comment. Answer it if you have the chance, but don't make it your job to go fight Rush Limbaugh, because even the Republican themselves, they made a lot of comment about Rush Limbaugh. He doesn't represent their view, some of the Republican in the past, to show you I call radicalism and the journalism. It's Rush Limbaugh. So, but
we don't want to give him too much attention here either. No.
Yeah. So I would really focus on the positive thing we could do, not talk about it, and try to help the youth to try to show we are like any other ethnicity in this country. We patriotic. I have some of my family serve in the military. 2 of them graduated from West Point Academy. We're very proud of it. We really wanted to be remembered as any other ethnicity or religion in this country. And I really not comfortable to make our fight to the future as a religious fight. It's not. It's a minority new to this country. We're trying to be part of this great nation, and I hope our fight it go in that matter to be, we want to compete to show we better, more patriotic than any other ethnicity. So sometime the opposition could push you to line you up to where you want to be, but I don't think Rush Limbaugh will succeed in that area at all.
And just let me say to any Rush Limbaugh supporters in the room or joining us via webcast, we welcome you to the Wilson Center Big Tent. And even Rush, if you're watching,
to maintain his academic
I think it's just
integrity.
interesting of not having the, you know, when you say Judeo-Christian, 35 years ago there was no Judeo. On Wall Street, if you were Jewish, you would have to go work for a Jewish firm. You wouldn't get a job there. And this struggle is something like a rite of passage in America. That I think that to be optimistic, I mean, we all got elected post 9/11, so I think that again, it's who we are as Americans. And I think that if you look at this, I remember when we were having lunch, I said, thank you to the Wilson Center, because it's on people's minds that we need to have this discussion, that the equality, the level of understanding for our religion is something that people want us to be here to practice our religion and live in peace side by side as neighbors. And if you look at other countries, I don't see Al-Azhar going around saying, hey, you know what, we need to have a program for the Coptic Christians. And I'm very, at certain points, I can be very, that pessimistic view that people put on, the United States of America, I put that pessimistic view on the Muslim world around the country. Because I believe wholeheartedly, and my contemporaries, who are my Islamic leaders will say the same thing, and I heard people say this in many speeches, this is the best country in the world to be Muslim in. It is the best country in the world to be Muslim in. And I stand by that statement because of we're a country of that believes in the rule of law. When we talk about Barack Obama, talking about it, he's not been Muslim. I think the media makes him out. I've never heard Barack Obama come out and say, I'm not Muslim. Now, an interesting point from a political point of view is his recent inauguration speech and the context of what it means, like Muslims overwhelmingly, wherever I go, support Barack Obama. I supported Barack Obama too. But I think that my question would always be is, do you plan on visiting a mosque in your second term? That's my question, because as I could say, George Bush visited a mosque. Are you planning on visiting a mosque? And I think that's when you look at in the political context, that's a stepping stone, that he would visit a masjid on Eid, rather than just sending out a Ramadan message, but actually going.
He has had Eid celebrations at the White House.
No, I've been there. Yeah, I've been there for dinner, not for Eid,
I just
but
want that
Ramadan dinner. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to commemorate, just to put that on the record. That's
put it on the record. I was there. I was a guest.
Yeah.
I got to shake his hand. It was great.
But invite this guy back on, grateful guest, not even bringing it up.
but I think that, hey, it's politics. What have you done for me today, right? And that's the thing. I think it's very important that, to get to that next level of acceptance, you have to say, what did we get? We had all these organizations supporting, the president. But as, again, getting back my critical thinking, my pessimistic view was, and I use this term somewhat harshly about photo op uncles, the people who are involved in politics, is that they sell out our dignity as Muslims in the political process for a picture without having any real dialogue behind, hey, you know what? Yeah, we're going to give you support, but these are some things that we have on our list that we need you to address. We would like a drop-in line in the inauguration speech, and we haven't reached that level yet because of a lot of, internal struggles, a lot of things that we still haven't gotten there in terms of. You would think that with all the discrimination that we would coalesce behind this issue, but we have yet to learn how to coalesce together and move forward for common goals.
Before we close, and I promise you this is not a hostage crisis, you will be released shortly. I wanted to do something a little different. Familiar with the concept of the takeaway. Most of you, including our three mayors on the panel, have been here for almost 3 hours of discussion or more if you count the lunch beforehand. And so often is, what is the takeaway? What is the thing you'll remember most? If it's from a journalistic perspective, maybe what's the headline? What I'm going to ask each of you to do in 1 minute each or less is, what is your takeaway today, but not something you said, something you heard someone else say? Whether on a previous panel, on this panel, from the audience, what is the thing that either you learned new or is something that you want to think on more or was important?
Okay. I can't say ditto.
I got to go first. All right. Okay.
But no, I'll go first.
I think the takeaway that I'm hearing, the takeaway that I'm hearing is that there's an emerging Muslim community that's interested in the public policy business, and despite the challenges of internal struggle about how you do it and how you get there, that there's enough interest to begin maybe to put some of that together, whether it is specific issues around public policy that we think interests us, to get engaged in our neighborhoods, to raise money for political candidates, that politics is not haram, that democracy is not haram. Those issues that raise the consciousness of during the civil rights movement, there was expression what the African Americans would say, I am American too. It's the same, that mantra applies to the Muslim community there. I'm American too.
I really think what taken is the center here promote more understanding to each other, and their invitation to see how the different politic in different state and different city work, how the Muslim react to it. And I really taken with me too many positive ideas from the judges, from the mayors, from the councilmen. Every one of us have a different experience. It's different how the history lined up each one of us to where we at, the circumstances, the understanding of the communities who elected us. The bottom line is we all serve the same culture, the same country, the same understanding, and I hope we give positive reaction, and I want to thank the center for it, and thank the citizen of Wayne who give me the honor to be here today. And I hope all of you take the positive message, as we are very positive addition to our great nation.
And now we want to see what you came up with now that you took the ditto position on this.
Well, I mean, the takeaway for me is that when you look at the questions that people are asking, and when people talking about Islamophobia and your issues as Muslims, it shows how small our politics are and how big our problems are. This country needs a diverse group of people, the most talented people, to work on issues from education to healthcare to our budgetary concern of growing our economy. And we need people who have the forbearance from our community and every other community to come forward and be part of this discussion. One of the things when we talk about, whether politics, good, bad, one of Keith Ellison's famous lines is, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I think that you see different interests all throughout, from the federal, state, and local levels of different.
And it's not halal either on the plate.
But you see these interests just being put forward with not any real understanding of public policy. And I think that, what I took away from this is, I heard about the judge, his drug court. I'm fascinated with what he was doing there because, I look at, this in our judicial system of just locking people up for having an addiction as just counterproductive to the society that I want to live in. Drug abuse is a health problem. It's not a criminal problem. And I think that when I look at that, and try to find ways to make people, members of society, to productive members of society, that's the takeaway that I want to sit down and talk with them more and learn how, you can spread that message all around the country. But I think that the one thing that it has is you're looking at people in a post 9/11 world who has succeeded in politics. I think that the sky is the limit. Anybody who wants to get involved, I'm the perfect example. If I can do it, anybody can do it. If you had met me in 2006, I don't speak publicly. I do not speak publicly. I would not ever speak publicly. And now, I give speeches in front of 5,000 people. So it's.
Can't stop them
now. No, I want to get off the treadmill. So somebody else, please run.
Well, like an Academy Award winner, I can't thank everyone, but I need to thank a few people. The previous panel, my colleague Philippa Strum, who is the intellectual force behind today's gathering. And then thanks to all of you joining us via the webcast. And for the final act of the chair today, I'm going to ask you to join me in thanking these magnificent mayors. And Councilman Jackson, who's no longer with us. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks. Hope to see you back at the Wilson Center again.